Welcome back to Last Breath Diaries. Tonight, we descend into one of the darkest corners of healthcare, into the sterile halls where compassion turned into cruelty and healing hands became instruments of death. This isn't fiction. These are the stories of real nurses, people entrusted to save lives, who chose instead to take them. This is the story of nurses who kill. The beginning. Jolly Jane, Boston, 1885. Hospitals then were dimly lit, their walls lined with oil lamps and the scent of chloroform. The air was heavy, thick with sickness and desperation. In those days, a nurse's word was gospel. Among them was a woman named Jane Toppin. To her colleagues, she was cheerful, jolly even. She joked, she soothed, she sang lullabies to the dying. But Jane's laughter hid a secret obsession. She was fascinated by death. It began innocently, or so she claimed. She would administer morphine or atropine to a patient in pain and watch what happened. The slowing pulse, the stillness, the way their bodies grew cold. But soon, the line between curiosity and cruelty vanished. Jane started giving higher doses. She'd sit by her patient's side as they drifted into unconsciousness, whispering to them as their breath faltered. Sometimes she'd climb into bed next to them, pressing her ear against their chest, feeling their heartbeat fade beneath her hand. When she was finally caught in 1901, Jane confessed to killing more than 30 people, though investigators believed the true number was higher. Her reason? I had a great desire, she said, to have control of life and death. Jane Toppin was declared insane and committed to Taunton Insane Hospital for life. The newspapers called her Jolly Jane. History calls her the first nurse serial killer. But she wouldn't be the last. She was only the beginning. The angels of death. As decades passed, medicine advanced, but the darkness didn't disappear. It evolved. In the 1970s and 80s, a Texas pediatric nurse named Janine Jones took over a small-town ICU. She was lively, talkative, and ambitious. But wherever she worked, babies began to die. Parents wept as their infants, previously stable, suddenly coded. Janine would rush in, performing resuscitations, fighting heroically to save them. But those who survived told another story, one of suspicious injections and unexplained collapses. Janine created the very emergency she was praised for fixing. She wanted to be seen as the savior, the nurse who never gave up. But she was the cause all along. Investigators linked her to over 60 deaths. In 1985, she was convicted for the murder of 15-month-old Chelsea McClellan and the injury of Rolando Santos. When asked why she did it, she simply said she wanted to create the need for a pediatric ICU. She was sentenced to 99 years in prison. Even behind bars, she smiled. Across the ocean, the British Angel in 1991 at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in Lincolnshire, England, nurses noticed something strange. Children in the pediatric ward were crashing, suddenly, without warning. Their vital signs would plummet, alarms would sound, and one nurse, Beverly Allett, always seemed to be nearby. At first, she was seen as a dedicated caregiver, but when a 7-week-old baby named Liam Taylor died in her care, followed by 10 other sudden collapses, the pattern was undeniable. Insulin injections, air bubbles in IV lines, potassium overdoses. Allett's victims were children between 5 weeks and 11 years old. 4 died. 9 were permanently injured. When she was finally arrested, psychiatrists diagnosed her with Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a disorder that drives a caregiver to harm others for attention or sympathy. But there was something colder in her eyes, something detached, the same emptiness seen in Jane Toppin. The quiet killer, Charles Cullen. Then came one of the most prolific killers in American history. Charles Cullen, soft-spoken, polite, almost invisible. He worked in hospitals across New Jersey and Pennsylvania from the 1980s to early 2000s. Patients under his care began dying at an alarming rate. Cardiac arrests with no clear cause. Toxicology tests showing digoxin, a heart medication, administered without reason. When he was finally caught, Cullen confessed to at least 29 murders, though authorities estimate the number could exceed 400. He said he killed to end suffering. But those who knew him said it wasn't mercy, it was power. Each time a patient flatlined, Cullen felt a rush. He called it relief. But what he really felt was control. He had been fired from multiple hospitals, yet each time he found new employment. Hospitals didn't want scandal. They quietly let him go, passing him along like a ticking bomb. By the time they realized the truth, hundreds were already dead. The German epidemic, Niels Hogel. In Germany, another nurse was building his own legacy of death. Niels Hogel, an ICU nurse, claimed he wanted to be a hero. He injected his patients with arrhythmia-inducing drugs, then tried to resuscitate them. Sometimes he succeeded, most times he didn't. His motive wasn't mercy, it was applause. He wanted to be admired. When police uncovered his crimes, the scale was staggering. Hogel had killed at least 100 people, possibly more than 300, making him one of Europe's deadliest serial killers. He smiled during his trial. He joked with guards. When asked if he felt remorse, he said, "I wanted to make them better." The forgotten names. Not every nurse who kills makes headlines. In Kentucky, Donald Harvey, known as the Angel of Death, confessed to killing over 80 patients across multiple hospitals and nursing homes. His weapon of choice? Arsenic, cyanide, and even cleaning fluid. In Canada, Elizabeth Wetlaufer murdered 8 elderly residents by injecting them with insulin. When she finally confessed, she said God told her to do it. And in the Netherlands, Lucia de Burke was wrongly accused of killing patients. A tragic example of how paranoia surrounding these cases can ruin innocent lives. Each of these stories, true or mistaken, reveals how fragile the line of trust really is between a nurse and their patient. The psychology of a killer nurse. So what drives someone sworn to heal to commit such acts? Some psychologists trace it back to power and control, a craving to play God in an environment where life and death are constant companions. For others, it's recognition, a need to be seen as the hero in a crisis they secretly caused. In certain cases, it's sadism, a cold fascination with suffering, and sometimes it's a warped form of compassion, a belief they are ending pain when in truth they're feeding their own darkness. These nurses often share traits, charismatic yet detached, calm under pressure yet emotionally flat, highly skilled but drawn to chaos. They operate in silence because the system allows it. Staffing shortages, poor oversight, hospitals afraid of scandal. Every institution that quietly transfers a suspicious nurse becomes part of the story. And so the cycle continues. Reflection. When I was a child, just 9 years old, I stood in a hospital hallway, listening to the sounds of pain, fear, and hope mingling together. The shrieks, the beeping machines, the hurried footsteps. Most children would have cried or turned away, but I didn't. Open quote. For most 8-year-olds, hearing those cries of pain, the shrieks of terror, the beeping of the life-saving equipment didn't turn me away, make me fearful, or make me squeamish. It did the opposite. I didn't know what all of those things represented in that moment, but I knew someday somehow I'd be a part of whatever I just witnessed. Close quote. That's how and when I knew. I wanted to be the one who brought comfort, the one who steadied trembling hands, the one who made the pain stop through compassion, not cruelty. And that's why these stories cut so deep, because they betray everything nursing stands for. The legacy of the Angel of Death. Jane Toppin's candlelit ward may be long gone, but her shadow still stretches across hospital corridors. Every decade brings new names, new faces, new horrors. Somewhere right now, another nurse might be walking through a hospital hallway, smiling, charting, adjusting an IV, while harboring that same dark desire Jane once confessed, the desire to hold life and death in the palm of their hand. And the scariest part? You'll never know which one it is. 3 questions. 1. What happens when compassion becomes control and mercy becomes murder? 2. How can a system built on healing allow death to hide in plain sight? 3. And when the hands that save are the same hands that kill, who do we trust when we're at our most vulnerable? Like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so you never miss when we dive into another true story that blurs the line between mercy and murder. Because on Last Breath Diaries, every story reminds us sometimes the hands that heal are the same hands that take your last breath.